So over on EMBN, I've done a video or two about flats versus clips, pros and cons, how to use them, what you should look out for. But I haven't really done it on EMBN, so I thought I'd share some wisdom with you, hopefully. And most importantly, I'm kind of going to put them to the test and see, well, is one faster than the other? Okay, I'm going to go left and... Oh, get on, gears. For such a video, I've come to the perfect place. I'm here in the Tweed Valley in Scotland, where I'm going to be using both types of pedals back to back on a course I have already planned out, uphill and downhill, I might add. And we're going to sort of compare, contrast, look at some times and kind of go over each pedal. So with that, let's dive on to clips. All right, before we get the stopwatch out, let's do a little pedal explainer just for the uninitiated out there. Quick explainer if you like. So we've got clipless and we've got flats. Now a flat pedal is called so because it's essentially a flat surface with pins in that a normal shoe will just sit on. Now here at the channel, we're sponsored by Fun and I choose to use this, their fundamental flat pedal. It's of metal construction all the way around, but you can get nylon versions of flat pedals as well. It's got pins in it. Now pins can be adjusted in certain length of certain spaces on various pedals. It certainly can on these. I run my pins pretty long because the longer the pin for me, to a point, is the more it'll bite into the bottom of the shoe. A clipless or clippy pedal, well, is essentially a pedal that you attach yourself to via a metal cleat in the bottom of your shoe. This sprung-loaded system in the middle here is where the cleat will then push into and attach. You can also see that there are pins on these as well. Clipless come in all sorts of shapes and sizes depending upon the discipline that you do. But for me, here again, I've got the lively one, the Fun Ripper. Now this is a sort of downhill or enduro style clipless pedal. It's got a big wide platform, so if you are unclipped, you've still got a good solid base to put your foot on. Big metal cage around it to protect that mechanical system in the middle. And like I said, it's got a few pins as well for grip. So what about pros and cons and which one to choose, especially when it comes to e-biking? Okay, so let's start with clips and the pros and cons of that. We'll put that one aside for the moment. Now, the clippy pedal is great for when it gets rough and rowdy. You must have noticed when you're hammering down a descent on your big e-bike, you got a bit of weight behind it, right? And because of that, sometimes if you're on flats, you can actually feel your feet jumping and skipping around. Well, this eradicates that completely. It can actually help give you a little bit more control over the bike as well, because you don't need to worry about what your feet are doing. Now, this one might be a bit of a contentious subject, but it can also improve efficiency because you can essentially push on the way down and pull on the pedal stroke on the way up. You're actually able to keep a nice, smooth power and cadence going through the crankset. Now, I think that actually this comes into its own, especially when climbing on an e-bike. So essentially, because you can push and then you can get the pull stroke as well, it can keep that motor constantly engaged. So when you're going up really steep or tech climbs, there's never going to be a dead spot, shall we say, where the motor might cut out, where you're not actually getting the power down. To me, especially where it does get steep and it does get technical, I think that's a real advantage of clips. Well, cons, experience does come into play there. As with clips on any kind of bike, it does take a bit of practice, and that sort of initial learning curve is very steep. Being attached to the bike obviously can take a lot of time to learn the process of clipping in, but more so for most people, actually unclipping. That classic scenario of toppling over when you've stood still next to your mates or in front of a group of people. It's happened to the best of us people, myself included. The other thing is obviously they can potentially cost more, and you do need a specific shoe as well. So you can't just buy the pedal and not worry about the shoe. If you get one, you've got to get a clippy specific shoe as well. Flat pedals now then. Well, the OG pedal, they've been around since basically the dawn of the bicycle, of course. But what are the pros and cons, especially when it comes to the e-bike? To begin with, they're safer, right? If you've just got into riding and you're sort of out hammering the trails, these things, well, you ain't really going to go too wrong with them. You're not attached to the bike, you're not attached to the pedal, so therefore they're safer in that sense. If you crash, you can easily put a foot down, you can dab, you can correct yourself real quickly and easily, and then get back on the pedal without having any issues. On the whole, they're generally cheaper as well. The pedal itself, like I said, you can get nylon-bodied versions of flat pedals as well as metal versions, which are lower in cost. And because of that, you also don't need a specialist shoe as well. And if you're anything like myself, e-biking in the winter is the most fun when it's muddy, sloppy, and horrible. So because of that, you can get a foot out. You don't have to worry about your shoes or your pedals clogging up. You can just dab a foot, get a drift on, and really enjoy those muddy conditions. But what about the cons? The first con, well, to me, would be that your feet can jump around on these, especially when the going gets rough. When paired with a proper mountain bike shoe with a flat, grippy sole with special grooves in it designed to fit around the pins, they can lock really well together, but they're still not going to be as steadfast as a proper clip and clippy pedal shoe. Now, to contradict myself slightly earlier, I did say that flat pedals are generally cheaper, and they are a lot of the time. However, there are some all singing, all dancing flats out there which are really sort of quite expensive. They can be magnesium bodied with titanium axles, but generally 9.5 times out of 10, they're just not needed.
It's important to understand with EMTBs the so-called efficiency afforded by being able to have a pull stroke as well as a push stroke with the pedals isn't quite as important to fast climbing. The reason for this is that an EMTB motor has overrun and varying sensors that keep the bike moving for a short distance. And although this varies between brands, a much more important facet of efficiency is your ability to be able to deliver the right cadence that gets the most assistance for the motor. Pedals are almost superfluous. It's more personal based than performance. Secondly, whilst feet bouncing off pedals with flats is certainly a feature of riding on MTB, and definitely down to individual bike dynamics, the fact that most EMTBs are heavier means there is less deflection from the system and in general to lead to a more planted ride. So again, pedals are a personal thing.
So that's a little explainer on both types of pedals, and we've looked at pros and cons as well. But what about when it comes to actually riding them and which is gonna be faster? Well, for that, I'm gonna need me bike. I've got 2 trails marked out here at Innerleith, an up and a down. I'll be tackling the board, my Canyon Strive on, 750 watt-hour battery, 85 Newton meters on the Bosch motor, up and down. We're actually gonna be using part of an EWSE power stage as well. Up first, the clips. All right, let's go. Oh, get on, please. And done. Well, that brings back some horrifying memories from the EWS. But to find out the time, you're gonna have to wait until we've gone downhill. Okay, this is the one for me. It's on to the downhill. We're in clip pedals. I've got high hopes for these when compared to the flats, so let's do it. Okay, the downhill has been done, the time has been set on clips. It's now over to the flats. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Oh my God. Yeah, that is exactly as I remember it. Okay, I did have to do a cheeky little dab, which we're going to touch on later. There were some other points for sure, but let's flip it around and go back down. All right, flat pedals supposedly win medals. Now this track that I'm on is pretty flippin' rough. Clips are done, so it's gonna be interesting to see how it goes. I'll see you in a mo. Okay, oh my gosh, that was a lively ride. So as we fade to black, let me catch my breath. Oh, okay. The riding is done. I am cooked. I've got my breath back though, so let's discuss clips first. So the times then, when it comes to the uphill, the kind of power stage, if you like, in clips, it was 54 seconds. Now I'm really comfortable riding clips. I ride them all the time on my e-bike and for that matter on most of my bikes actually. So I kind of knew what I was going into. That's not to say I've never worn flats or never used them. Obviously I've used them tons on my pump track bike, etc. But just going uphill, I found that ability to be able to push, pull, maneuver the bike when in clips on an e-bike, especially because you're being driven, really advantageous. When it came to the downhill, it was a much similar affair. The downhill time was 1 minute, 27 seconds going down in clips. And I think, again, we're going to get to the flats times, but the reason for sort of quite a good time, I reckon, is that the fact that, again, I'm comfortable to it, but it was a really choppy downhill. It wasn't too tight and techers in that sense. It was quite fast, quite flowy with big berms and things, but there was some really fast, rough sections. And just that sort of stability and that kind of confidence that being attached to your bike, once you're used to it, gives you, allows you to really charge on and really plow hard through that rough terrain. So as the last of the Scottish sun sets, the times for flat pedals on the uphill, bear in mind, clipped in was 54 seconds, flats was ever so slightly slower on a 56, so only 2 seconds in it. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, it's quite steep and it's very loose, so I constantly sort of found myself trying to adjust my feet position and I wasn't able to give it that full power like I said I could in the clips. I also had to put a dab down. Now this is kind of a plus and a minus. If that was clipped in, I'd dab and then you might struggle to get your foot in, you might get something jammed in it. Flats, you literally dab, balance yourself, foot back on and away you go. On this occasion, e-bikes, I just don't think there's quite that continuous power, that efficiency and taking away that worry. So yeah, 2 seconds slower. Now onto the downhill. Again, we were a couple of seconds, so actually 3 seconds, so it was 1 minute 30 dead. So not a lot in it, but again, with just the flat out high speed sections and the real choppiness that we had on that, it actually sort of really did throw my feet around a bit. Now these flat pedals are really good. I run the long pins, they bite nicely into these Shimano shoes, but you can't compensate really for that sort of attached feel. Now, Steve Jones is probably screaming at me right now. A flat pedal hero, he loves the things. And you know, once you dial in your technique on flats, you really drop those heels and put your weight into the pedals. I daren't say a few more runs and that would definitely be a time brought closer together, but Steve may disagree, who knows? Anyway, let me know in the comments down below, which do you think is kind of better on an e-bike? Is it a flat pedal or is it a clip pedal? What do you ride? I want to hear. Thank you very much for watching though, everyone. From in the inner Leafen, I'll see you later.